Hello, I'm Elif and this is a recap for episode 100 of the series For My Family, 24 hours after Turkey and before dubbed for TV. Mahi finally enters the house and carries the unconscious Asiye out, taking her to the hospital. Asiye quickly recovers and thanks Mahi for his help. On the other side of the dinner table, Akif makes all efforts to grab Soraya's attention, which doesn't go unnoticed. Soraya playfully teases Akif with smiles and mischievous words. Yaman states that Soraya is supposed to work with them at the club, and Akif readily agrees. Shortly after, Susan and Lydia clash, and Susan angrily demands to leave with her mother. The next morning, Nabahat sees Soraya's headscarf in Akif's jacket pocket. When she inquires after hours of brooding, Akif gets defensive, blaming her for suspicion and scolding her for doubting him, claiming he found it. At school, Lydia tells Omar that she has withdrawn from private classes due to Susan's sensitivity to avoid complications. When Susan sees them from a distance, she becomes nervous and interrogates Omar a little later. Omar, fed up, leaves Susan alone and heads back to class. Susan is convinced that Lydia deliberately caused this situation. Şengül, who needs money for household expenses and installment payments, takes the gold coin that Fatma gave to Omijan to a goldsmith to sell it, only to realize it's a counterfeit coin. She tells Fatma about the incident that night, and Fatma pretends that she was deceived by their town's goldsmith. Then, Şengül asks Fatma to lend her some money, and Fatma reluctantly agrees. Omar is arranging the library with two schoolgirls when Lydia rings one of the girls and pretends to be Susan. She warns the girl to stay away from her boyfriend. Sarp, who overhears Lydia's words, approaches her and says, "I also want Omar and Susan to break up. I liked what you did. Keep going." When Omar hears about the incident from the girl, he confronts Susan and asks her if she really did it. Susan, shocked, denies it. When she sees Lydia's mischievous smiles, she approaches her and says, "It was your doing, wasn't it? You overlooked something. Omar trusts me. Your plan failed. Stay away from us." Şengül and Fatma go to the bank to get the money, but at the last moment, Fatma claims she doesn't feel well and forces Şengül to leave. Şengül, suspicious of her behavior, decides to confront her about it. Bark, who doesn't want to face his friends before leaving, leaves a farewell note, shocking Aybüke. However, Elif, unaware of the situation, says Bark isn't going anywhere. Yasmin tells Tolga she wants to talk to him and asks him to go outside. Tolga, thinking Yasmin wants to confess her feelings, eagerly waits. But Yasmin says she's interested in Mahi and asks Tolga to help her get closer to him. Tolga reluctantly agrees. Ayla and Bark tell Elif that they are leaving for Italy forever tomorrow night, leaving her shocked. Ayla says she can stay in the house and will send her money every month. Elif pretends not to care, goes to the bathroom, and cries bitterly. Everyone is invited to the club's opening party. Omar and Susan are busy working there. As soon as he is free, Akif approaches Soraya and starts talking to her. Soraya asks, "Are you hitting on me?" Akif replies, "It depends on whether you're in a relationship with Yaman or not." Soraya says, "Not for now." Akif returns Soraya's headscarf to her and tells her he found it today but couldn't tell her it belonged to Soraya because Nabahat was suspicious of him. Helmia and Şengül go to the neighborhood bank and find out that Fatma doesn't have any account there. They overhear from a neighbor that Fatma ripped and dirtied her clothes in the park a few days ago. Şengül realizes the whole robbery story was a lie. Angrily, she heads back home. She tells everything to Orhan, and Fatma is forced to confess. Fatma admits that she lied to stay there because her unruly kids took everything from her. She wants to leave, but Orhan stops her, saying she can stay as long as she wants. Şengül becomes furious and vents her frustration. During the event, Aybüke, who has been waiting for Bark the whole time, calls Elif and learns that Bark and Ayla have a flight in 2 hours. Shocked, she tries to call Bark, but his phone is switched off. Tolga, seeing Aybüke's distress, offers to take her to the airport. On the way, Aybüke sends a message to Bark, telling him everything. Lydia goes to Omar with 2 cups of tea, noticing that he must be very tired. She turns the teacups on her hands and winces in pain. Omar takes her to the hall and applies ice to her hand. Sarp, who saw them, informs Susan that Omar and Lydia are together. Susan attacks Lydia, and Omar explains what happened. However, Susan is convinced that Lydia did it intentionally. Exhausted from Susan's behavior, Omar leaves her alone. Soraya thinks about Akif's words and decides to relax a bit. She wraps her scarf around her neck and goes to Nabahat and Akif. Nabahat is shocked when she sees the scarf, and Akif is surprised. Soraya says, "It's a personal design. I bought it from France." Akif tries to smooth things out, but Nabahat empties a glass of water on his face and angrily leaves. Akif tells Soraya, "I told you Nabahat is sensitive. You messed up. She owes you one." When Ibiku arrives at the airport, she rushes into the terminal and looks for Bark but doesn't find him. Suddenly, she catches sight of him and shouts his name, following him, but Bark doesn't hear her. Ibiku, with a sense of desperation, cries in a corner. Bark hears her crying. He has changed his mind about leaving. They embrace each other. Bark says, "When I thought I wouldn't see you again, I felt terrible. Even if you don't want me, I can still see you here." Ibiku says, "I never thought about separation." Bark says, "Then why did you distance yourself from me?" Ibiku says, "Didn't you read my message?" Bark turns on his phone, and Ibiku stares at him fearfully. Bark reads the message. Ibiku wrote, "Elif is your sister. They took custody of you. Mrs. Isla is responsible for our mother's death." Bark can't believe what he has read. Ibiku wrote, "Elif is your sister. You are adopted. Isla is responsible for your mother's death." Bark can't believe what he has read. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode.